Villages are true universities. You see everything scarce, all resources scarce, and you learn every resource management only in a village. 100% practicals and no theory, and you come up with a lot of solutions. Mind you, lives, you are successful only if you have solved problems. And when you are in a village, you will have enough to solve. And rich children find it difficult to solve problems because they were not given enough problems. Please make sure problems are enough given to the youngsters. So that was the village, and I had to study in spite of my father did not like me to study. It's a landless farmer's family. Hardly there was any resource. So my father wanted me to work in the field. I wanted to study. And you know, only incentive what made me to keep studying? In villages, all graduates get fair girls to marry. And I was not interested in anything else. So I kept on insisting that I should go to school. And then midday meal scheme was there, fortunately. I thank governments of South India who continuously help children to continue to their schooling. And there was no parent-teacher associations. My father never had come to the school. And I must tell you, the village was a wonderful place to live. I did my graduation against all odds, chemistry, maths, physics, with maths as my major subject. Afterwards, in Coimbatore streets, I asked for a job. Mind you, I failed in 50 interviews. I was not worth for an employment according to entrepreneurs. Largely, interviews were held by watchmen. And if I happened to meet one graduate who interviewing me, he had the audacity to ask me all the time, do you have an experience? But had I known which medical store experience is available, I would have purchased a capsule and had it. To come up in life, first one should sit down. जो कभी नीचे बैठा ही नहीं है, वो कभी ऊपर आ ही नहीं पाएगा. This is how I looked at life. I said about this, and 150 rupees was my first salary in 1978. 79 was 175. Then 200, then 225. Had I continued in the same job, today my salary would have been 1,000 rupees per month. Fortunately, that company was closed down. In life, either you can discuss or decide, you can't do both. Many try to do both. It's impossible. I left home without discussing with my father. If had I discussed with my father would have loved to have me in Coimbatore. But then I took a decision to go, so I did not discuss. I took a ticket and showed to him. I got married in 1986, and I did not tell my mother. All of you must be concluding that it was a love marriage. But actually, my father-in-law loved me. In 1986, I was working in government as a gazetted officer. And one fine day, I felt I should not continue that, and I resigned without telling my wife. She was in State Bank of India, and I was in Baba Atomic Research Center. You can imagine how comfortable life was. Son was 5 years, daughter was 3 years, and my wife is asking. I took a decision to resign because my wife is working. And in the middle of the night, my wife is throwing a challenge. What happens if I also don't go? That challenged me a lot. And just I told her, good, you also don't go. साथ जिएंगे, साथ मरेंगे. She never went back to bank, and I never went back anywhere else. I think that was a point I want all entrepreneurs to keep in their mind. You need to have courage. When Dr. Lalla showed, it's the courage of taking the first step. The rest is almost happening as long as you have got a stamina. A gazetted officer, I was a mathematics man. When I went into BRC interview, I was asked a question, where is thyroid, and did not know where is thyroid, and did not want to tell the thyroid is here. Within 10 years, I did a PhD in thyroid. And within another 10 years, I made Thyrocare as the world's largest thyroid testing laboratory. So this was something I want all of you to keep in your mind. Don't do what you learned. You will only survive. If you want to succeed in life, just change the field. There is a likelihood you will do it very big. So it was a 14 years of stipend. You must be wondering which university or college can give 14 years of stipend. If you learn more and work less, it is stipend. And if you work more and if you learn little, it is salary. For me, lifelong it is stipend because I always keep learning. Please keep learning. Never give up learning. Many think that after getting a job, it's all over. They will not like to look at the book. Continue to learn. Act poor. Many do it other way. They act rich. Acting rich is riskiest in the life, and acting poor is the safest. Lived frugal. In my 14 years of BRC life, I lived frugal, so much so, on the day of resigning, I had 100 months of requirement for my family, and I can afford to gamble. Please note, every step in that Everest always had something to support, fall back. And in business also, you need to have it. You can't just climb Everest with nothing around. Lucky for me, in 1995, when I started business, web servers started working. Before that, there was no web server. Then Air Cargo started accepting specimen. Emails, username, password came in only in 1995. Barcodes usage, machines and computers started understanding, and a bidirectional understanding interaction was possible. It looked like God was waiting until I started my business. I'm happy that when I started, all these things together started. Profits are everywhere. Pricing is just a philosophy. I priced thyroid at $2. Market was charging $25 in India. Globally, it is $100. I don't know where from I got a courage. I priced it at $2. Many ask me, what is the single largest mistake you have done in your business? That is pricing it at $2. That single mistake made me the richest man in this diagnostic segment. Please do good mistakes. And I have dreamt of 1,000 crore. Mind you, every part of the body, each of them have a similar ratio of revenue. Entrepreneurs sitting there, start focusing, please. If you want money, in the bracket I have put a girl, they would never give. Because had I gone to my father-in-law, he would have refused. Because he cited me and he wanted me, he had to walk 5-6 times. And if you say no, they would not allow you to sleep. No banker will allow you to sleep if he has come and asked you, and if you say, I don't want money. And I have thanked Brand Capital because that is the first party who trusted me, who saw me larger than what I am. And it's important, as much as my father-in-law felt I am a tall man, I thank Brand Capital too. That's it. 2 lakhs investment brings 200,000 lakhs. And I thank all of you. Thank you very much.
So, surgeons tend to be very prototypical. And as you know, I'm a heart surgeon. And so 3 doctors go out hunting, and they're hunting after ducks, right? And the first flock of birds flies overhead, and the radiologist jumps up with his shotgun and he pulls the trigger, and he says, well, that could have been a duck, but it might be a goose. We'll need clinical correlation. And so the birds actually fly overhead. He misses completely. Next, the internist is at bat, and another flock of birds flies over. And rather than pulling the trigger, he goes through his differential diagnosis and figures out which medication you can do. And so the birds get away again. Finally, the surgeon gets up, and the birds fly overhead. And he pulls the trigger as many times as he can. He, turns and he says, pathologist, go tell me what that is. So my talk is a little unusual, and it's about saving the kokila. For some of you who don't know, that's the Asian koel. Can you play the video? So when I was growing up, there was a story about a man who would go to work every day, and during the course of that, he would notice all of the flowers and the trees growing and everything else. As he got more involved in his work, became an entrepreneur perhaps, he started looking down and walking faster. And he got busier and busier and busier. One day while coming back, he looked up again and he noticed everything was gone. The trees were gone, the flowers were gone, and some of the other attachments around. Instead, what was there was a concrete jungle. I had this experience when I first came to India, and we had moved back here 3 years ago, and I was given the job of a secretary of a building. I thought this was exciting. Believe me, it's not exciting to be a secretary of a society whatsoever. But anyway, as part of my job, the coconuts and the palm leaves were falling down, breaking windows on cars, and so I had them trimmed. And when I first came, I noticed this bird would start singing at about 7 a.m., and it had a very guiling call. Some of you may have heard it. It was just played. And after I cut down all of these branches and whatnot, the music was gone. And what I realized is I had eliminated this bird's habitat. And in so doing, I prevented the cars from being damaged. But what I'd done was basically eliminated something else, which was also very beautiful. And so the Asian coil becomes a metaphor for culture, and in this case, dance, as you'll see. So my roots started in India in that my parents immigrated from Dadar in Maharashtra almost 25 years ago in 1963 to London. They were in search of a better life, and at that time it was about 50 years ago, 25 years after independence, they were in search of a better life. And their thought was that education is what would set them free. And my folks came from very humble beginnings, and my dad had 5 kids living in a 2-bedroom flat in Mumbai, which is actually quite good in India, considering if you look at the overall population. And so I was then born in London and grew up in the US, and during my growth period, my father was always inquisitive, always wanted to travel, always brought new things home. And one of the things he brought home when I was 11 or 12 was this computer, an Apple IIe. And back then it was one of the whiz-bang gizmos, an 8-bit machine, which really did not have much going on when you compare it to the smartphones now, let alone the computers. But I taught myself to program because there were no teachers back then. And I was amazed at what you could do, and I created a corporation which actually produced software for education and for realtors, and had won a few awards for entrepreneurship by about 18. Unfortunately, my parents, who came from very conservative, humble beginnings, said that you must be a doctor or an engineer or your life is over. And so I exceeded and went to some of the finest schools in the US and was very fortunate to have some amazing mentors, and I became a heart surgeon. And I worked in that job for almost 20 years. I got my license in 1993 and was doing about 300 to 500 cases a year and taking care of some immensely amazing people, and very rewarding because you could make the difference between life or death. But the problem was there was a certain inherent lack of scalability in what I did. No matter how hard I worked, at most I could do 5 cases in 2 operating room theaters per day, and the net impact was limited to less than 2,000 patients per year. When you look at the scope of the problem, there's 7 billion people on the planet. And in India in particular, there's 1.2 billion spread around 28 states, 30% of which are in the metros, 70% are in the rural areas. And so I thought to myself, what if I could use my previous talents as a software entrepreneur with my new talents as a physician and scale medicine to 7 billion people? And with no arrogance intended, I'm a very humble person, and I believe that if you have the passion for something and an idea which makes sense, you can find the means to make it happen. And so I created something called Top Health Guru, and we started to plan out how to do this by ingesting big data, figuring out what people have wrong with them with the symptom engine, and then directing them and changing their habits. And the biggest thing for me, and the hardest part for me as a physician, was that I would often see people 20 to 30 years into the disease process. And I would be operating on them, bypassing their coronaries, changing valves, taking care of aortas. But the problem was they were already too far along with their smoking, drinking, eating habits. So what I said is that if we could appeal to the least common denominator and get the message out, we could change how things happen. And so I'm giving a talk at the Healthcare Forum. You should definitely come and you'll see what we're doing with that. During the course of this planning, though, sorry, guys, the screen just went black. I'll keep talking. During the course of this planning, something happened one night. And as you know, I'm married to a fairly prominent actress in the industry. And she said to me one night that dance and culture are going by the wayside, that what's popular now in culture has nothing to do with what it meant. And for her, dance was a spiritual journey. She had started at the age of 3, had done most of the Kathak tenets and had won many awards. And that's how she was discovered to go into film. And at 16, she actually did her first role, but she was discovered at a recital for one of her Kathak performances. And so her desire was to build something which would scale. And we had been studying how to get the message out to people and how to become everyone's doctor in their pocket. And what we had found was that the smartphone at that time when I came here only went to 150 million people. And now actually, I'm sorry, to 50 million with 150 million internet users. And now it's 300 million internet users and 100 million smartphone users. But 1.25 billion exist in this country. And so what we also found was television is a very powerful medium. And media, as per se, is a way to get the message out and teach people and change the way they think. In addition to that, feature phones are very powerful, and SMS-based messengers in India work much better. So we created a company called R&M Moving Pictures, and this was my first foray into entrepreneurship. And the idea was basically that all screens would converge. The big screen would become the television would become the laptop would become the iPad, and the iPad would become the phone. And what we said is that if you could control content across those, then you could become the one who delivers it. In addition to that, we could use that for the good of everyone by informing them, educating them, and getting them up to speed. And so what we created then, after 3 months of ideation in 2012, December, was something called Dance with Madhuri. And this was the first celebrity-backed online gamified dance academy which basically tried to bring the world together around dance. And so what we said is if we could gamify it, socialize it, and build it in such a way where you unite everyone, this would become the next Facebook or LinkedIn for culture, and thereby make dance into something which it was previously. And just to give you context, in the olden days, not only in India but elsewhere, the Rajas and everyone else would have the artisans in their court. The artisans never had to worry about the money or where it was coming from, and whether they would get their next meal. Nowadays, they have to worry about that as well as everything else, and rights issues in India have not been a pretty thing, as some of you are aware, and we'll get to that. So, can you play this video, please? So this was, the good news was we could produce very, very high-level content.
Action.
Today we're shooting for teaching dance online. There are millions of languages in the world, but one language is universal, which is dance. So what we're doing is basically breaking down every song into a number of lessons. Every lesson will have a part of the song which I teach. They learn that part, they move on to the next lesson. By the end of all the lessons, they will have learned the whole song. So, get ready. Let's go all black. अब I've been dancing since 10 in the morning. We've been shooting for 13 hours continuously. I'm really tired.
She did a great job. So now remember, here's this guy who's a glorified plumber, meaning me, who has no experience with production, who was capable of pulling this off. So then, just play this video, please. I don't know how to say it in Malayalam, so I'm sorry.
You have seen her dance. You have loved her dance. Now you can dance with her. No matter who you are, no matter where you are.
It's time to dance with Madhuri Dixit.
Step into Madhuri's dancing shoes and explore the magic of dance.
Are you ready to rock?
Log on to www.dancewithmadhuri.com and compete with yourself, your friends, and the whole wide world in a fun, social, and interactive way.
Come, dance with Madhuri Dixit.
So this created as many questions. This created as many questions as it answered, in that, could we do this? Could we teach people in a remote fashion and actually expect them to upload and do that? So this was our first iteration, which we pulled off in March of 2013. And this was the app system which went with it. This was our month-over-month registration. So clearly we were having an effect. These were the demographics of the users, and as you can see, 18 to 44 was the biggest age, and predominantly female, but some males. But this was an eye-opener. What we expected was that only India would do it. It was an India-centric product, and as Modi says, made in India was this. But what we found was that while India was 50% of our audience, everywhere in the world, people were embracing this. And 14% of the US, or rather 14% of our usage was from the US. And so in the first year alone, this is what happened. Play this video. And this is an example of the teaching as well, as you'll see. We were getting thousands of uploads from this.
So before
and
we
the remarkable
start
part is we
the
actually
lesson,
were able to do
I
it.
want you to get familiar with some of the hand mudras. Your right hand with the lotus and the other hand is like a deer hand. One,
So
two,
these
three.
are all uploads from
So
around the
you're
world
curling your hands
that
a
we've
pizza style.
interlaced here.
मेरा झुमका उठा के लाया यार वे जो गिरा था बरेली के बाजार में मैं तो ठुमका लगा के शर्मा गई बोली घूम कर बजा दे के मैं आ गई मुझको नचा के नाच ले.
Okay, so this is the sign or the hook or the signature step.
आजा नाच ले मेरी यार तू नच ले.
Chanak, chan, car will be separate.
ओ नच ले मेरे यार तू नच ले अब तो लुटा है बाजार.
Rara, 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 ra.
Thank you. So based on that evidence, what we said is, let's scale this now. And I had spent zero on P&A. She had a fledgling Facebook site. I got an SEO, SEM team, and we built that out. She now has 16.9 million people as followers on Facebook. We now use that, social media and all that. All of these people, what they were talking about, we're actually evidence of the same. We're not the I forget what he called it, the old money kind of established people. We're more of a startup, even though you have 30-year-old brands. So now you're seeing for the first time the new construct, which is coming out next month. And it's about learn, move, and unite. Learn accredited courses from the masters. So what we've done is created a global community, a global village for culture. And with us, Biju Maharaji, Saroj Khan, Remo, Terrence, Shamak Dower, all of them are coming on board, as well as 4,500 other institutes to teach and to be part of this experience. And so what we've done is we've protected the artists. We give rev shares to these guys. And the most amazing part of this is it's free for the user forever. And you'll see how we've done this. Next is Move. This was a very interesting learning. I put a heart rate band on my wife for the Dancercise episode, and I found in 15 minutes doing her Dancercise moves for that video, her peak heart rate was between 130 and 160 the whole time. And you know, I'm a data scientist and a physician and all that, and I took a look at it and I'm like, you've just lost 400 calories in 15 minutes. Literally, I plotted the area under the curve. And so then I put this up on YouTube, and it became our #1 video because people can learn dance once, but they'll work out to this forever. And what became interesting is the value proposition for these people that what would you rather do, be on a treadmill treading water, or would you rather have some very beautiful woman in front of you goading you to exercise? And so I built out a whole fitness unit, which was complementary to some of the healthcare stuff we were working on. And with the new construct, we actually have wearables incorporated. And the whole thing is then put into a system where you have resumes and you have video profiles like Facebook, which we've created. So every time they learn, it's all gamified. They get points, rewards, and all that. They upload their videos and they go through the machinations. And then what happens is these same videos then become part of the Unite. They have followers and are followed. And the institutes have followers and are followed. And then the filmmakers and all the others who need dancers are on the platform. And they do a job post like LinkedIn, and they actually pay for the job post, and the users find jobs. And what we're ending up doing is sourcing talent from 206 countries and millions of users from places which would never, ever have been touched. So the open audition model is completely disrupted by this. And so DID recently announced and is coming on board, and they want to use this engine to find their next set of contestants on their next show. And so this is an interesting way to change how things happen. So this is the story. We create great courses to make you look and feel your best, that challenge the world, resulting in epic performances designed by the gurus, recommended by stars, loved by everyone, just for you. This is our model: online, offline, and market. Online, it acts as a Coursera Academy where it's free for the user forever but gets charged for certification only. And in that, you create a whole different set of things. You can move, dance, and stay fit. Offline, you get certification of gyms. There's never been a validation of gyms or institutes, which we can provide. And so when you go out as the consumer and try to find a good gym, they'll have pictures and a video resume which you can go to, almost like the Zomato or whatnot of restaurants. At the same time, we can help you do a contest post or a festival post or whatever you want. Finally, the LinkedIn for Culture is very exciting because it defeats some of the current models. So the learnings so far are as follows. And this is coming from a budding entrepreneur, so forgive me, and I'll take any mentorship I can get. We did a limited spend in the initial stages while proving the use case. I used all of the favors I could call, and in 30 years in the industry for her and 30 years in medicine and health for me, we could do quite a bit because she's an institution in and of herself. We did rapid prototyping. Within 3 months, we had a product out and launched, and we studied the data. I put full metric tools into that, including Google Analytics, Kissmetrics, Crazy Egg, and these are all things where you can map out exactly what happens. I can see every user's journey and see what they're doing. Because of that, we could plan our next set, and we just got out of the studio and filmed another 60 classes, which I'll show you a few as a hors d'oeuvre later, or as a dessert, I should say, to this. We built out our core team once the proof of concept was successful. So I only had an office boy, a guard, and a secretary when I started, and I outsourced everything as I needed it, and basically learned what I had to do. And so just what the one Rakesh Nair was saying, I didn't really waste time on things I didn't have to. And quite honestly, I was an entrepreneur years ago, but I haven't coded in ages. I've been operating and putting people back together. The aha moments were when people started to upload. And that's a very hard behavior to get people to do because it takes a lot of bandwidth. There's still learnings. The last thing is the contest showed we could gamify and socialize teaching. So traditional learning is this horrible thing which we all went through in my age group and probably in many of yours, where they would force feed you and ask you to regurgitate on a test. To me, if you're going to build the curiosity and create a lifelong learner, you have to make them believe that they're doing it for the right reasons. And whether it's in this or using gamification in medicine, the end result is the same, that these people have to do it because they like to do it. And so that's what we've done with teaching. And the interesting part is you can take this platform and put anything into it. I can teach tennis with Federer. I can teach music with any one of the maestros. I can do any of those. But it reduces the obstacles to uptake and thereby also increases engagement. Next, we used our strategic advantages. The brand and the concept had a definite alliance. Madhuri is known for her integrity in dance and actually has the skill sets. Yes, she's a very successful artist with 72 films over 30 years with 6 Filmfare Awards and all of this other stuff. But the main thing was that dance was her passion. And once upon a time as well as now, and she wanted to share it with the world. So when you have something like that, and then you have someone like me who acts as the enabler and the founder guy, you can actually build a team around you and go from that. The next thing was defining the audience. Based on the audience, we could determine what things we needed to film. There's a lot of stuff we could do. And the audience really told us what we could do, and it was a constant dynamic process because we would look at our YouTube data, we'd look at our usage data, and we would plan the next content strategy. The pain point still exists, though. AV rights are a very contentious problem right now. The Supreme Court actually ruled that they had to be shared with the artists. For some of you who don't know, in India at least, every artist who has ever done any type of song, dance, or film role does not share in the royalties of that film forever, in perpetuity. In the US, they actually have those residuals. And so what ends up happening is a company like T-Series or Eros or whatever buy this and they continually market it. So here you have an artist who's creating the IP and they have absolutely no means to enjoy in its success. So what we've done is actually created a different model where these artists are part of our team and we actually cut them in on the residuals, keep a top line expense there. You can see I'm learning the entrepreneurship very well. But we take a top line expense and we actually believe that they should be partners with us and be part of the whole culture and the community. So what we're trying to do is create a hippie village for culture. The next is CDN costs as we scale could be an issue. CDN is Content Distribution Network. And as we get more and more hits, the biggest problem we've had now is scale. When we initially released the site, we didn't know what would happen. We would now put one thing out on Facebook and all of our sites on Amazon would crash. Because what would happen is we had 16.8 million people on Facebook and we'd get a storm surge of 100 or 200,000 people coming to use the thing. And even with elastic occurrences and other things, we've still struggled. So we've now built up a very solid background of servers and this and that and the other, Bitgravity, this and that. The last thing is production costs. As content scales, costs actually go down. And fortunately, I've been, associated with some amazing people. BBC Worldwide helped us with our first production shoot. 120 Media helped us with our second. And now I actually have the whole team in-house. So my strategy was simple. Outsource it until it becomes a profit center, and then either buy the company or bring the team in-house. And so we're on our track there. So what's next? When do you bring on investors? You can imagine with the brands we have, we are privy to quite a few sponsorship deals, and we're lining those up. So in truth, we don't need the money for the program or to run this. And in fact, now as we monetize this, our hope is that we'll be profitable from the start. However, I, of all people, understand and have learned that in order to scale, you need strategic people with you, and you need people who understand the vision, who aren't looking at just bottom lines, top lines, profit and loss. What they're looking at is what this means to the culture and the ecosystem. Because if this is successful, it will change the way you learn, number one. Number two, it will make dance and any type of art form into something which is easily accessible, because what it will do is democratize how you learn. Because it will go to anyone who has a phone. And actually, we're going one step further in India. This was the other learning. Only 300 million people have internet access, but 900 million people have television access. And so we're talking to Tata Sky to take this as a pay-per-view event like Air Javed, so that 900 million people enjoy in the lessons, and they charge them 10 rupees per month or whatever. But the return path would be a feature phone. So we're innovating to try to get this out there. I'm using some of the same contracts for healthcare as well. And so it's like NASA, you know, you learn to go to the moon, and during the course of it, serendipitously, you learn all kinds of interesting things. The other interesting thing is sorting out the revenue model, which we've sort of talked about. So the conclusion is you can teach dance through a gamified, socialized environment while staying fit and connecting with the universe. It can be extended to art to create a global village for culture. There's still many challenges. Bandwidth is limited in India, but globally it's not an issue. Engagement and revenue models need to be sorted out. It potentially disrupts and unites several areas. Now, how do you disrupt and unite? It's when you change the ho jaiga and the existing model, and you put something into place that everyone can use, not just a select few. Finally, the biggest thing for me was follow your passion, right? I spent 20 years as a heart surgeon, loved every minute of it. Now I'm trying to scale medicine, scale health, scale culture. And this is something which is very important. I've got 3 more things if you'll be patient with me. Fast forward to this one.
Where the sari? Ah, mil gaye. You do chapati.
This is for you, Kerala.
Oh, that means Polly Tolly. We will be doing Sari Ka Falsa, directed by the great Prabhu Deva sir.
साड़ी के फॉल सा कभी मैच किया रे कभी छोड़ दिया दिल कभी कैच किया रे
I am ready. Are you guys ready? Dance with Madhuri.
And one last one, just for kicks.
Vanakkam. Welcome to DWM. Rajni Star.
So these are all new lessons coming up. These are sneak peeks because no one's seen them
before.
before.
It's going to be a Bolly-Tolly mix into the dance form that I'm going to be teaching you today. Do you want to come join me?
If you don't recognize this guy, this is Salman off of JDJ, Jhalak Dikhla Ka, and he's a pretty prominent choreographer. All of these choreographers are from DID, Jhalak Dikhla Ja. There's one slide, if you'll humor me. Can you hit play, please?
In this class, I'll be teaching you Mera Piya Ghar Aaya from the movie Yarana. Mera Piya Ghar Aaya, O Ram Ji. Learn this only on Dance with Madhuri. Come, dance with me.
Television has to be centered on demystifying medical care. In India, doctors are gods, so to say, and there's this big black box, and you trust them with your lives, but at the same time you say, why did he charge me all this? And the interesting part is, it's not entertaining to go to the doctor. Instead, the idea is most people have phobias that some doctor's going to chase them with a needle looking after them. But the only time you really go for the most part is when you're sick, not for prevention. Our thought is that if you can make medicine entertaining? And the saying as it goes is, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. What if you could fundamentally change the perception of medicine so that it was no longer perceived as medicine? What if you could gamify it, socialize it, and unite it like we've done with dance, and then make it into something which you do every day with your friends and are actually aware of what's going on? Sounds like a conjecture, but it can be done. Our idea is to basically use our media presence, both mine and my better halves, to basically bring medicine to people wherever they are and educate them. If you look at the top 10 killers of people, heart disease is number one. But if you were to separate what risk factors people had for disease and implement pathways which are well formed and bring standards up to evidence-based international standards, what would happen as a result is the outcomes would change fundamentally. At the same time, we have access to just about everyone, and you can meld the education with popular celebrities, sports figures, other notables, as well as other things, to make it entertaining as well as educational. Most of the TV shows I've seen here go to the extent of Doordarshan, which is a great soporific. It puts you to bed. But the medical shows on Doordarshan really don't cut the mustard. The second thing would be creating a web presence. And what we're doing is creating full-featured apps, websites, and SMS solutions. Why SMS? Because feature phones are held by almost everyone in the periphery. And these provide the consumer and the professional with tools in one place to gain knowledge about healthcare and how it pertains to them, including topics of interest ranging the gamut, well-produced videos, diagrams, informational sort of charts and whatnot. And then in addition to that, ask the doctor features. And then finally, amalgamating with existing infrastructure. And the goal is to have international standards provided at a reasonable cost while at the same time delivering great care. Let's all face it, medicine is a business worldwide. And the idea is it should be transparent, it should be good, and it should be the same for every single person. It's not. And the idea is if we can make it that way, then we're going to make a change fundamentally in how things are done. The revenue can still be generated on volume. We have 1.25 billion people. What will change, though, is that people will become more productive, have less absenteeism, and have longer lifespans and better lifestyles. Those are the goals. So the hospital chain would amalgamate the essentials of information on the other portals. At the same time, you would use high-level evidence-based care, outcomes research, and good bedside patient-doctor relationships. I think one of the compromises, even for me as a surgeon, was that I had a lot of patients in the hospital, sometimes 25 to 30 patients in 3 different hospitals. And so I would have physicians, caregivers, or care extenders taking care of my patients. And if I was in the operating room, my job was to basically operate like a machine. And that really doesn't treat the patient fully. In fact, in my opinion, you do two things. One is you treat patients like family. You wouldn't do anything different for them than you do for your own family. The second is that half of the medicine is actually the science. The other half is the art. And the art is how to talk to people and how to relate to them and how to make them feel good when they're not feeling good. And that is really a difficult thing sometimes. The protocols we're putting into place would consist of partnerships with our group and known players in the healthcare and private industry and government, and would create a number of processes and patents now pending to deliver content. They would also rely heavily on low-cost, low-tech, as well as some moderate and high-cost options in order to allow care to all entities. Ultimately, they would attempt to unite disparate elements in a common cause and would include government, NGO, and private resources to achieve a sustainable goal. So in conclusion, I think this can readily be done. And the ultimate thing is that we cannot have a evolution in healthcare, because evolution takes too long. What we need is a revolution. And that revolution can be fueled by adequate tech and other resources which are in place. I think India is ripe for having something like this happen. I think every single one of us in this crowd has a medical story to offer as to when they were sick and what happened. The idea is if we can help them and be the doctor in their pocket and the one who's always there, the family doctor in your pocket, imagine what could happen. A consult anywhere you're going, the ability to network with your physician, the ability to exchange notes with other patients, the ability to have medicine checkers. We have full feature sets designed for this. But I think the sky is blue and the future is bright. And I think some of these things which I showed you in the first part may actually become reality. And we're not just talking devices, we're talking all kinds of systems which we can put into place along with the infrastructure to improve medicine. Thank you very much for your
India is now globally acknowledged and applauded as the nation of the young. This is a huge change in perception from the days India was being blamed for her population growth. I thank President Murali Gopalan, Executive Director, Wing Commander Chandrasekhar, as well as all charter members of TAI Kerala for inviting me to the function. I wish the TAI all success in all your initiatives. Thank you all.